歡迎返嚟藝方星期天。傳統詩歌一向俾人嘅印象咧，就係溫柔細膩，係文人描繪大自然、抒發情感嘅媒介。不過時下年輕人咧就偏愛活潑生動，咁就連詩歌咧都要好似流行曲咁樣，同以前古人花前月下、醉醺醺有感而發嘅吟詩畫面啊，相差好遠。所以今日咧，我哋特別介紹大家聽一種以 rap 歌形式唱出嘅詩歌。有請2011年澳洲說唱詩大賽冠軍 Luka
Lesson was a name that I took when I started writing hip-hop because I was doing a lot of teaching in schools, teaching young people how to rap and how to write poetry. And so Lesson came from that. And then I moved to Melbourne and started performing more as a poet, but I didn't want to use my hip-hop name as a poet, so I started just saying Luka. And then people who were fans of my poetry or liked my poetry didn't know when I was performing hip-hop because they didn't know who Lesson was. And people who were fans of my hip-hop didn't know who Luka was, so I decided to put the names together and made Luka Lesson, so now.
Do you know how war goes? Feeding on the lost souls.
喺成為嘻哈藝術家同表演詩人 Luka Lesson 之前，佢係 Luke Halalumpu。2011年 ，Luke 贏咗澳洲滿貫詩大賽。呢個比賽1984年喺芝加哥首次舉行。比賽入面通常有5位由主持挑選嘅觀眾評判可以參與評分。由1980年代開始，滿貫詩大賽傳到其他國家，包括德國、加拿大同英國。澳洲喺07年舉行第一次滿貫詩大賽。
A poetry event, you can just get up and perform, but a slam puts pressure on you to be the best you can possibly be. So I really love that. The prize was pretty amazing. I got to perform in Beijing and in the Ubud Writers Festival in Bali. So while we picket signs for our rights and try and occupy the streets, we all must touch my lips.
上個月 ，Luka Lesson 應澳洲領事館邀請，喺香港國際青少年讀者節入面主持以香港學生為對象嘅英詩工作坊同埋分享會。
It helps me in that I understand the enjoyment behind poems more, I guess, and I would probably try to write some poems. And if I do have like a written assignment or something, I would try to use poems to express what I feel.
Workshop will definitely help me with my writing a little bit. I think that now I know another outlet to express my feelings. So now I know that poetry isn't just limited to this rhyming scheme or anything like that, but that it's really open to anyone's interpretation and you can express poetry in any way you feel.
I've heard voices in the moon. 除
咗演講同埋喺工作坊分享佢嘅寫詩技巧之外 ，Luka 亦積極肩負起社會責任。
The doves fly in with the bats. I've had no one come to lend a hand.
17, only 17, you'll die.
2010年，佢成立 Centre for Poetics and Justice， 為澳洲嘅土著、非洲人同難民社群舉辦工作坊。
If you were 17 and in need of a dream.
My experience of growing up in Australia, I've definitely been a victim or I've definitely experienced racism. I also studied Indigenous studies and have taught Indigenous studies at Monash University, so I have been able to observe Australia and experience Australia in a way that unfortunately most people don't get to, where they're not educated about the colonial history of Australia. And so it's been important to me to be able to work with all different types of people from all backgrounds, whether they are Anglo-Saxon Australian or Aboriginal Australian or migrant Australian like my family is, to be able to learn from each other by listening to each other's poetry or listening to each other's voices and stories about the true history and experience of Australia rather than what sometimes the rhetoric from politicians.
2012年2月 ，Luka 推出咗收錄佢17首詩作嘅專輯《Please Resist Me》。 專輯嘅名稱嚟自入面其中一首詩，首詩係關於殖民主義同埋澳洲弱勢社群所面對嘅不公平對待。
Please resist me, colonize me, compromise me, and conflict me. Please don't risk me. Please call me stupid because your resistance brings out evolution.